All right, I'm back. Let's see if the audio is fixed here. It fucking better be, man. I'm so sick of this shit. All right, it's working now. Dude, like my computer keeps changing my input on me, but StreamYard makes it look like I still actually have the audio working. It makes no fucking sense, man. All right, I'm gonna try to rehash what I just talked about real quick. I talked about Memphis Clemson. I said Memphis, they're coming off an ugly loss to Arkansas State, so I do think they're kind of in a bounce back spot. Clemson looks like they are potentially would be looking ahead a little bit, maybe to South Carolina rivalry game against South Carolina up next. So those are really the only thoughts that I have on that would maybe have me leaning Memphis a little bit in this one, plus the points. Maybe Memphis being like a little bit downgraded too far, having dropped totally from the rankings. So I don't think Memphis is a top 25 team. I think they're about like 30 or so. Clemson probably around 20. Clemson down from 6.5 to 5.5 in this one. This game is up in a half hour now at 11 a.m. 51% of tickets, 59% of the cash now on Memphis. So that's the way I lean in that one. Just running through real fast, man. Number 17, Texas A&M. Number 11, Purdue. Purdue's up from 1.5 to 2.5. I didn't really have too many thoughts on this one when I just talked about it. 66% of the tickets, 58% of the cash on Purdue. These are not my plays. So Purdue, I mean, I'm not making any plays in either of these games or any of the games I talked about so far. I mean, this matchup, I don't think there was a whole lot to say about it. Texas A&M coming off a win over Texas Tech, kind of a rivalry game, but it's not like they're going to show up unfocused for this game against Purdue. I believe this is a neutral site game or semi-home for Purdue. It's in Indianapolis, so I believe it's semi-home for them, but I could be wrong about that. I mean, you could check. I don't even remember which town or which city Purdue is actually in. Purdue's coming off kind of a close call against Maryland. Maryland's a pretty good team. Purdue, I expected to kind of bounce back harder from that lost to Penn State, which was a game that I won on because Purdue I thought was kind of in a letdown spot off of the Ole Miss win there in that tournament or whatever. Purdue didn't totally have a great game against Maryland. Maryland is a pretty good team as well. So now is Purdue going to kind of try to bounce back from that? I don't know. And Purdue does have Auburn up next, but it's not for a week, so I don't really think this is going to be a look ahead. This is a nationally televised game against an SEC team, so I think both teams are going to show up for this one. So this game is a hard read. It's hard, man. So I'm not going to play that one. I mentioned Ohio State, Auburn. I mean, Auburn is the better team here, but by how much, I don't know. I don't think Ohio State's that bad, but Auburn has faced a very difficult schedule with big win over Houston, big win over Iowa State, pretty big win over North Carolina, too, a win over Memphis, and then they lost to Duke. I mean, I think they just had a really crazy run of games here. They finally lost to Duke. I thought they were going to be in a bad spot if that Duke loss, but they still totally destroyed Richmond coming off of that. Richmond, not a very good team, but that at least shows me that Auburn isn't even really getting caught in like unfocused spots and not showing up. They still showed up. So I expect Auburn's going to show up in this one as well. Both teams will. This is in the Holiday Hoops Giving tournament, which I don't know if that has anything to do with Thanksgiving. It's a late Thanksgiving. I don't know what the hell it is, or if it's just general holidays. I don't know. Ohio State was able to bounce back with a win against Rutgers. They got crushed by Maryland. I mean, that is kind of an egregious loss, even though Maryland is pretty good. But, I mean, it's not a good sign when you lose by that much. But they were coming off a tough game against Pitt, so maybe I'll give them a pass on that. And it was a true road game. I mean, Ohio State's two of their losses have been true road games against Maryland and Texas A&M, so those are not easy opponents. They did beat Texas to open the season. Rutgers is not a very good team, but I mean, again, this is another game where I expect focus from both teams, but Auburn's up from 9 to 12 with juice. 68% of tickets, 77% of the cash coming in. Yeah, what's up, guys? Charles, thank you for letting me know. I don't know what's going on with my inputs being switched like this, man. It's happened twice now. The slump has been discontinued, Stacks. The slump is continuing as far as my audio, but I at least won on I won the other day on Thursday, which I won't rehash it. I did rehash it with no audio when I started the show here, but who really cares? I went 2-1. I already talked about it. I already ranted about how bad the San Francisco 49ers are, so whatever. We got the Battle of Cincinnati today here as well with Xavier against Cincinnati. Cincinnati ranked 22nd. Both of these teams are pretty good, though. I mean, I think this is going to be a battle. These two teams hate each other, man. I mean, this is going to be, I expect this to be a physical battle. Cincinnati Are they deserving of their ranking? I'm not entirely sure because they really have faced an easy schedule so far. So that's the issue that I would have looking to try to play Cincinnati in this game. They really do not have an impressive slate of opponents on this resume so far. They lost to Villanova on the road, and then what's their best win? At Georgia Tech. I mean, they did blow them out, but this is not an impressive schedule so far on the part of Cincinnati. And then on the other hand, Xavier has faced a more difficult schedule than Cincinnati has. Losing to Michigan, though, losing to TCU on the road. Those are not easy games. Michigan definitely better than we thought they were to start the season. So somewhat more difficult schedule for Xavier. Xavier now coming into Cincinnati, although, again, they're both Cincinnati schools. They play each other every year, so both teams are used to playing each other. Cincinnati is down from 9-8 with juice, so they do have 72% of the cash on them, 65% of the tickets on the other side on Xavier. I don't think I would want to look to the Cincinnati side here, man. I might disagree with the cash on that one. I just don't really see it. I mean, you usually expect this game to be a tough physical battle, so it's also tough for whoever's the favorite to really actually win by margin in this one, too. And Cincinnati, again, like I said, I'm not sold on them yet until I see them actually win some better games here because their schedule has been very, very weak so far. Very weak. So moving on from that, Wisconsin and Butler. This is the first game where I was really kind of eyeing it, like maybe wanting to play Butler here. This game is, I believe this is part of this Indianapolis tournament or whatever, so it's in Butler's home city, but it's not actually at Butler's home arena. It's in the Indy Classic here, so it's a semi-home game for Butler. It's given me a semi because I almost wanted to play this. Number 20 ranked Wisconsin. Wisconsin had a hot start to the season, but then they had this one big win over Arizona. I think Arizona, maybe not as good as we thought they were to start the season, although I will talk about Arizona shortly. So I don't know, but Wisconsin also is a team that likes to kind of slow the pace a bit. Arizona likes to speed it up, although Arizona successfully sped this game up and still didn't win. So Wisconsin had that. Then Wisconsin had that nice comeback to beat me against Pitt. I actually had Pitt in that game. Pitt, I thought, was being undervalued and is actually the better of the two teams. But what can you do? Wisconsin was able to beat me and win that game. So that was their other big win of the season. Now they've gone on a rough stretch, man, where they've lost to three good teams, Michigan, Marquette, Illinois, the last two games on the road. And I lost that Illinois play by a half point, even though Illinois was up 10 in the final minute. Yeah, thanks a lot for that one, Illinois. But this is a difficult spot for Wisconsin, man, in my opinion, because they've had all these step-up games here, a close loss to Michigan, big battle there, going out on the road in this Wisconsin rivalry game, basically, to have to face Marquette. Couldn't get it done. Then they played Illinois on the road, another tough battle. Now they're really kind of stepping down in class, even though this is a Big East team. So on the one hand, that means that Wisconsin maybe should have an easier time in this game because Butler's not as good as these last three teams that they play. But on the other hand, is Wisconsin going to be out of gas coming into this game? That's kind of the issue. And it's also a third straight non-home game for Wisconsin because this is not a home game here. This is on the Big Ten Network, so they're hosting it even though Butler is a Big East team. Wisconsin's the Big Ten team, obviously. But Butler, I think Butler's in a better spot here because they're coming off a loss to North Dakota State, who's not a terrible team, at least for like a Summit team. They're a pretty good team, but Butler still should not have lost that game. They were a 13.5-point favorite. They lost the game. I think Butler's going to be in a bounce-back spot after this, man. Butler, they were coming off a game against Houston, and then they came into this game, and they had this game to look ahead to against Wisconsin. Then they got Marquette, UConn. I mean, I think they got caught in a sandwich spot here. I mean, this North Dakota State game, that was like one of the down spots on their schedule there, and they got caught, and they did not play well. They lost the game. North Dakota State was blowing them out of the building, actually. North Dakota State shot 43.3% from three. Not really a sustainable three-point percentage there. Butler shot horribly from the field, 37.1. So I do expect a bounce back from Butler in this game. This is close to being a play for me, man. Wisconsin, though, they're up from 4-5. Market indicators look a little bit sketchy here. Look like they're towards Wisconsin, but I obviously would not agree with that. 64% of the tickets, 72% of the cash on Wisconsin. Yes, sir. So I lean to Butler in this one based on the situation, but this one is probably the one that is the first one that I'm leaving off my card, and I can't quite do it with Butler there. First game I'm actually going to play. Let's talk about it, man. I'm going to skip some of these other games, which are kind of big, just because it's whatever. Let me see here. First game up is Arizona minus 3.5. I told you, I just talked about Arizona. This is one of those games where technically you do have an unranked home opponent laying points to a ranked road opponent here, man. And again, as I said, those are really good money makers last year. I know the odds makers are adjusting to accommodate for this. I know KenPom has UCLA as the better of these two teams. KenPom does have Arizona not winning this game by 3.5. I think he has them winning this game by 1 or something like that, but that's still kind of in that range of, what's the word I'm looking for? It's still in that margin of error, I guess I would say there. I like the Arizona side here, man. I mean, these home unranked favorites have been big money makers, although, like I said, again, the odds makers are shifting the number a little bit, so you're getting a little bit less value playing these teams down because they know how much of a moneymaker it was last year. But I still like this one, man. UCLA has jumped into the rankings, and they're coming off their biggest win of the season so far. A couple of big wins in a row against Washington, but then they went on the road to Oregon. I believe this was in Eugene, Oregon. And they had not only did they pull off an upset, although it was a small upset of 3.5, they did it on a buzzer beater 3-pointer. When they were losing by 1 point, they hit a 3 with 0.4 seconds left to win the game. And not only is that your biggest win of the season, but it's the most dramatic win for you of the season on the road. That is a massive win, man. And now they're coming off of that game, and they got to play Arizona. And this is a neutral site game. It's semi-home for Arizona. It's the Hall of Fame rivalry presented by Continental Tire. Sounds like one of these bowl game names here. This is in Phoenix, Arizona, man. So this game is in the state of Arizona. So I think it's a tough spot, man, for UCLA. Having to come down from that game off against Oregon. Now they have to go to Arizona and play this game. Yeah, man. I mean, and the rankings have basically flipped where Arizona started the season ranked. UCLA, I believe, started the season unranked, and now UCLA is sitting at 8-1. They're ranked. Arizona's sitting at 4-4 and unranked. The public's going to come in and look at this, and they're only going to go one way with this. I mean, look at this. You get an 8-1 team who's ranked against a 4-4 unranked team, and it's not even actually on their home court, and the ranked 8-1 team is getting 3 to 4 points in this game. The public is going to think that's massive value there. They're only going to want to come in and take UCLA, and I'm going to say not so fast. I mean, UCLA has faced the more easy schedule here. I mean, they lost to New Mexico, and then even that Washington win's not very impressive. The only impressive win they have so far is that win over Oregon. Other than that, they have not done anything so far, man. And UCLA shot 52.2% from three-point range in this game. Like, do you think that's sustainable? I would say it's not. So they had a really particularly very good shooting performance in that game too. So coming off of that, I don't like it, man. And Arizona has faced the more difficult of these two schedules. They faced Wisconsin, Duke. I mean, no shame in losing those games. Oklahoma's good too. West Virginia's not that bad. This has been a more difficult schedule, although I know you could argue, well, Arizona hasn't beaten anybody good. That's true, but that means I think they're going to be more motivated here, man. This is their chance to beat somebody good. And I know Arizona's had the upper hand back when these two teams were in the Pac-12. Arizona's now in the Big 12. UCLA's in the Big 10 now. It's an old Pac-12 rivalry game. But now that you have these teams who are former Pac-12 teams, and I know Arizona did have the upper hand the last couple of years in the Pac-12, or really just the last year, I think Arizona finally got over the hump. Or maybe it was the last 2 years, because UCLA actually had the upper hand the years before that. So I think that's kind of a wash. Like, does UCLA really want revenge because Arizona beat them twice last year in the regular season? I don't know. Maybe. I think it would be more of a revenge scenario for UCLA if Arizona had knocked UCLA out of the conference tournament last year, but they did not. And Arizona didn't even win the Pac-12 tournament last year. They were a highly seeded team in the tournament. They got knocked out by Oregon, by the way. Arizona got knocked out by Oregon in the Pac-12 tournament last year, and Oregon won it to steal a bid in the tournament and probably deserved to be in the tournament, to be honest. That Oregon team, pretty good, and they're good again this year with some of those same players. But back to this game, man. I mean, again, I like the Arizona side. Arizona, at least in their last game, it was an easy win over Southern Utah, but Southern Utah's not horrible for like a lower conference team, and Arizona just smashed them. And I think that's going to end like a bad loss streak for Arizona here at the very least. So I think that's going to give them some momentum coming into this game. So I like that aspect of this too. And the other aspect I like about this is that this is a big-time collision of pacing where UCLA likes to really slow the game down, and Arizona does the complete opposite. And Arizona is going to want to speed it up. And on a team's, not on their home floor, but in a team's home territory like this, I think Arizona is going to be able to speed the game up here, especially if UCLA has any leftover kind of hangover, like fatigue from that game against Oregon, the way that ended. I expect Arizona's probably going to be able to push the pace in this game, kind of get UCLA uncomfortable in this game. Give me Arizona minus the points. This game's up from 2.5 to 4 now. It does look like the cash is on UCLA right now with 72% of the cash, 56% of tickets, but I don't agree with where that I see that cash percentage right now. I don't even know if that's actually accurate. I agree with the Arizona side here. The line has moved in that direction. It's probably still at 3.5 or 4. Obviously, it would be better to get 2.5 there, but what can you do? I mean, I'm going to lay it anyway at 3.5. I like the Arizona side there, so that's my first play. Give me that one. We have this New Jersey rivalry against Seton Hall and Rutgers, and I will just say things have gotten so bad for Seton Hall that Rutgers is a double-digit favorite in this game. Seton Hall is just that bad. Rutgers is not even that good. This is in the Garden State Hardwood Classic. Although I think this is on Rutgers' home floor, but you can check me and see if I'm wrong about that. I think this is an annual New Jersey rivalry event that alternates home sites, I believe. I don't know, but Rutgers is an 11.5 point favorite. The line has actually moved down a little bit. I mean, both of these teams do kind of play ugly. So if it's a lower scoring game, it might make sense to actually come in and try to take the points with Seton Hall there. But that line just looks so crazy to me, seeing Rutgers being that much of a favorite against a Big East team. Seton Hall, I mean, they're just that down this year. Rutgers, again, not even that good of a team. So I don't know what else to say about that. Kansas is hosting NC State. I mean, Kansas is certainly the better team here. Kansas should be in a bounce-back spot off of that ugly loss to Mizzou. They lost to Creighton the game before that, so they lost their undefeated standing. They lost 2 games in a row. Kansas dropped from number 1 in the rankings, which I don't think they deserved. I don't think they're the number 1 team, but I don't think they're as bad as they looked in these 2 games either. I think they're probably somewhere around like the 10th best team. I expect a bounce back from Kansas in this game. This is going to be a tough place for NC State to have to go to, man. And they have not played a true road game yet this season. So I don't really like how this sets up for NC State, even though they are coming off a lackluster game against Coppin State, which they were probably just going through the motions in that game. Because look at all the difficult teams they played before that. Purdue, I mean, BYU, Texas, not easy teams to face. Finally, they won against Florida State. So NC State doesn't really have any impressive wins either. So pretty much when they've stepped up in class, they haven't really succeeded, although they haven't been uncompetitive either. But, I mean, when you're probably going to get 2 teams that are both focused, you tend to want to look to the better of the 2 teams, and that is Kansas. Kansas up from 13.5 to 14 with juice. They got 75% of the tickets. Of course, they're going to be public, but 93% of the cash on them. I'm not going to come in and try to fade Kansas in that spot. Florida is up to 9th in the country. This game is a neutral site game in Atlanta, Georgia. So many neutral site games here. This is in the holiday hoops giving again there. Way too many neutral site games to keep track of, man. This Florida team, I think they're actually legit, man. I mean, I know they haven't played anybody good yet, so that is the one hesitation I have. Really, their biggest wins are Florida State, Wake Forest, I guess, Virginia, which they did smack Virginia there, and they were able to speed up Virginia quite a bit there. Virginia likes to play way slower, and then they crushed Wichita, which might be Wichita's only loss this year. But it's like Arizona State. I don't think Arizona State is that formidable of an opponent here either. Florida is just rolling right now, man. So I would not really want to try to step in front of this train, even though Florida does have UNC up next, which is probably a bigger game than this. But I don't know, because Arizona State's rolling as well. They're 8-1 on the season. So maybe Florida will still be focused on this. Arizona State, excuse me. I mean, they had a couple of nice wins over New Mexico and St. Mary's. It's not easy to beat St. Mary's, man. Then they stepped down in class and blasted San Diego in a game that could have been like a sandwich spot, but it was just such a mismatch. It didn't even matter. Now they got this game against Florida. This is a big game for Arizona State too, man. So, again, I don't really know what to think about this. Arizona State has actually faced a more difficult schedule so far with St. Mary's in there. New Mexico's not that bad. Gonzaga, very difficult opponent. Grand Canyon is pretty good as well. Cal Poly is even a team that I've played a couple of times flying under the radar, and Santa Clara is actually pretty good as well. So Arizona State really has not had the easiest schedule. It does look like the money is coming in towards the Arizona State side. Florida down from 8.5 to 6.5. 75% of the tickets, 73% of the cash. So Florida is public with less of the cash coming in on them. I don't want to try to come in and step in front of this Florida train, but the money does look like it is leaning towards that side. I could see that argument because Arizona State has faced a more difficult schedule, and Florida does have North Carolina up next, which is a big looming opponent there at the very least. So I don't know what else to think about that. Kansas with the juice. Yeah, they got O.J. Simpson there, man. He did it. It's finally been admitted that he did it. All right, I'm trying to catch my breath here. What else do I have? I don't even know what other games I'm on. Did I skip one of the games I'm on? I hope I didn't. Did I skip it? I don't think so. If I do, I'll go back to it. But LSU SMU is just kind of a weird game, kind of a matchup you don't see very often. This is in Frisco, Texas, which I don't even know if this is that actually a home game? I don't think it is. SMU plays in Dallas. Dallas is their home city there. So this is in the Compete for Cause Classic, which is probably raising money for some charity. I don't know exactly what. LSU at 8-1 to start the season, though, and SMU at 8-2. So this is an interesting matchup, man. Teams that you don't usually see playing each other. I don't know what to think about this game, to be honest. LSU lost against the best opponent they faced, Pitt, this year. These other games that they faced, not very impressive. I mean, Kansas State's down this year. Florida State probably not that great this year either. So I don't know what we can really gather from LSU's schedule so far. I don't think they're that great. SMU maybe has faced a slightly more difficult schedule with Mississippi State in there. Butler, maybe not that great either. And then they did beat Virginia in the last game, which is a nice win at the very least. But I expect both teams are probably going to show up and want to play in this game. I don't really have any opinion on this one. I just thought I'd talk about it because it's a weird matchup. SMU's up from 2.5 to 4, 58% of the cash on the 54% of tickets on LSU. So the cash, I could say if you read the market here, the market read is on the SMU side, pushing the number up on them and with the cash on their side. And I can't really say I disagree with it. I mean, LSU is going to be the team that gets the more public action here just because they're LSU. They have the bigger name. This isn't football, but even in football, LSU has the bigger name. Even though SMU had a better season than LSU did in football this year. But basketball, both of these teams are not great, but they're not bad either. So tough to gauge here in this one too. The charities are all scams. I don't know, man. I mean, maybe. I mean, you got like Tom Brady's whatever his charity is there for like disabled children or whatever. You get him like accepting like gifts of like vehicles, new vehicles from that charity. It's like, I thought that if you donate to Tom Brady's charity, that money was supposed to be going to help disabled children, not to buy Tom Brady a new car. Like, I don't know. I mean, it does seem like some of these things are scams. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. What else we got on the card here? Bradley and Santa Clara. This could be one of the better games on tap today, man. I know it's an under the radar game. I would lean to Santa Clara in this game slightly just because the game's in Henderson, Nevada, so it's out in the Pacific time zone, which is Santa Clara's time zone. It's a little bit of a less familiar environment for Bradley to have to go into. Both these teams are off to a nice start. They're both good teams. Santa Clara's up from a pick'em to -3, though. 71% of the cash on them, 71% of the tickets on Bradley. So Bradley is actually getting the public action in this one. Santa Clara, I think people continue to just discount how good they are, and probably because of their record. I mean, the public's going to come in and see this record and think, wait a minute, I'm getting points with an 8-1 Bradley team against Santa Clara, who's at 500. Well, give me that. Give me the points. The public is only going to want to take the points here. Would I want to lay 3 with Santa Clara? I mean, I don't know. I'm not doing it personally, but that looks like where the heavy money is coming in. And I would have rather had a pick 'em or -1.5 on Santa Clara, though, if I wanted, obviously. This is in the Jack Jones Classic in Henderson, Nevada. I don't know who he is. I don't know what's going on in that one, but Bradley, I mean, they faced the less difficult schedule than Santa Clara, man. They faced Washington State, who I'm going to talk about in a second as well. Washington State in the remnants of the Pac-2. They're actually in the West Coast Conference now. Washington State and Oregon State are not orphans like they are in football. They actually joined the WCC, and then I think they're going to move to the reformed Pac-12 next year. Very strange. I don't know. But, so Bradley lost to that Washington State team in one of their only 2 road games. They're coming off a nice win, which actually I think was a conference win Yeah, at Southern Illinois. That was a nice win for them. Southern Illinois is a decent team in this MVC conference usually, although maybe they're down a little bit this year. Bradley, pretty good, but again, pretty weak schedule for Bradley so far. Those basically are their two biggest games. Those are their only games away from home, I think, this year. At least those are their only true road games. This is not a true road game, but it is, I think, a more advantageous location for Santa Clara. Santa Clara just beat Fresno. I mean, I don't think there's anything to glean from that other than the fact that they came off games against Stanford, TCU, Washington, McNeese, and then they still didn't suffer like from a fatigue aspect or anything like that, and they beat Fresno anyway. So that tells me Santa Clara, pretty strong team. And like I said, they faced a way more difficult schedule. They had to face St. Louis when St. Louis still had Robbie Avila there, although he went down in that game. Santa Clara beat them. They lost competitively to Arizona State, lost to North Dakota State, who's not that bad. They did get crushed by Nevada. Nevada's good, though. Losing to Stanford, I'm not going to really shame them for that one. They played well in that game pretty much, even though I think Santa Clara was actually maybe favored in that game. Maybe they should have won it, but still, Stanford's a bigger conference opponent. TCU, that's a nice win over a Big 12 team. Didn't play poorly against Washington, and then they beat McNeese, which McNeese still has a lot of the guys they had last year. Man, I'm pretty sure for that kind of flash in the pan, maybe, McNeese team last year. Not playing as well this year with some of those same guys there, although I expect McNeese to still kind of dominate their conference this year. But again, I think Santa Clara is the better of these two teams. They face a more difficult schedule. The spot is more advantageous to them, so I do like that side as well. Jack Jones is a civil rights leader, okay. In Nevada, like, why? What does Nevada have anything to do with the civil rights movement? I don't know. Isn't everybody just like a white like gambler or Wild West prospector out there in Nevada? I don't know. I mean, I've been out to Nevada before. I've never been to Henderson. I've been to Las Vegas, and I've been to Reno. Exactly, and I've been to Area 51. Don't tell anyone. Let me see. What else is I going to talk about here? I'm going over a lot of these games. And next up is one of my plays. It's Missouri State plus 11.5. I think this is a bad spot for that aforementioned Washington State team, even though this is a home game for Washington State at Pullman, Washington, home of Brian Koberger, who is on trial for the Idaho quadruple college murder there, which I'm still not convinced that he actually did it, to be honest, man. You can call me insane if you want to, but if you look into that case, there are a lot of problems that I have with that case. I'm really not sure. But Washington State, as far as their basketball program, yeah, they're sitting nice and pretty here, 8-2. Maybe they're sitting a little bit plump and gay right now, man. They faced a somewhat difficult schedule. I will give them that. They beat Bradley, as I said. That's a nice win. Losing to Iowa, I'm not going to shame them for that. Iowa's pretty good. Losing to SMU's not bad either. Then they had these two huge wins, man. They went on the road and they beat Nevada and Boise. And now they're coming off of those two big wins, man. I just think we're going to see some regression here. Nevada shot horribly in this game against them. 38.6% from the field, 20% from three. The game was close. Otherwise, Nevada just really had a bad shooting. And they were an 11.5-point favorite in that game, and Washington State went in and beat them. Then Washington State turned around, went to Boise and beat Boise. I think this was at Boise's arena, I think. I don't know. It was at least in Boise, Idaho. And Boise had a terrible shooting performance, too. 37.9% from the field, 25.9% from three. Washington State also shot badly from three, 27.3%, but better than Boise. And they shot 50.9% from the field. So I'm seeing some kind of outliers here, man. I mean, do you really want to come in and say, well, that just means Washington State's defense is just that good, man? I'm not ready to say that. And this was another big upset of 8.5 points in this one. So Washington State, they're coming off two huge road Mountain West upsets, basically. And beating Mountain West teams on their own floor, not an easy thing to do. Now they're coming back home and they face Missouri State. I think this is a sandwich spot, man, because you're really going to pay attention to a Missouri State team who's kind of just an okay, barely above 500 Missouri Valley team. And then who do they have up next in 4 days? Oh, yeah, they have their big rivalry game against the University of Washington. They got to go play them in Seattle. They got to cross the state and play Washington. That's going to be one of their biggest games of the season, man. Washington State versus Washington is always one of the biggest games on their slate. I think they might look past Missouri State here, man. And Missouri State coming into this game here, Missouri State, I mean, they haven't really faced that easy a schedule, really. They've been tested. I mean, they lost at Butler by 7. That's not bad. UT Arlington, they beat. They're not a bad team. They beat High Point. They're not a bad team. Losing to BC, an ACC team, by 2. That's not bad either. South Dakota State is not that bad. And yeah, they lost kind of badly. And then they did lose their worst losses in their most recent game. They lost as a favorite against Indiana State, losing their first conference game. Kind of a bad performance for Missouri State in this one, man. Indiana State did shoot 57.1 from the field, though, and that's with Robbie Avila, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar no longer there. As I said, he's on St. Louis now. So Indiana State shot a really high outlier percentage from the field in this game, man. I don't really expect these things to continue like this. Missouri State, I believe they were favored in this game. Yeah, 4.5, and they lost this game. So I'm expecting more of a focus spot for them, a bounce back side, even though I know it's a weird situation for them to have to go out and play in the Pacific time zone. But I also think these teams have had a lot of time off. So again, you have to look at what have these teams, how long have these teams been off? They've been off for a week. I think Washington State has also been off for a week. But Washington State, when you're rolling like this and you're coming up big wins like this, the last thing you want to do is have time off, man, because it can disrupt your momentum. You sit around. I mean, you're listening to how good you are right now, how awesome those wins were. And now you got a team that you expect to easily beat coming into your place before you turn around and play your big rivalry game in a couple of days. I don't like it. Give me the points with Missouri State. Washington State's down from 11.5 to 11. Very public with 88% of tickets and cash on that one. Missouri State plus the points. Give me that one. Boise, Harriet Tubgirl, what's up? I'm assuming you're a dude. Maybe you're a chick. And the combination of Harriet Tubman and Tubgirl, man, I mean, that just, that really gets me going. That's hot. Jack Jones was the first NCAA black coach. All right, I gotcha. Did he coach in Nevada? I don't know. I don't even know who he is, man. Forgive me for not knowing the civil rights basketball history here. I don't pay attention to it. All right. And then UC Irvine and Oregon State is interesting, kind of, because UC Irvine's still undefeated. They're definitely a good team. They're basically a powerhouse in the Big West conference at the very least. But Oregon State is from the better conference, even though they're not in the Pac-12 anymore. They're in the WCC. They face a more difficult schedule, kind of, just because they faced Oregon, and they played well in that game. And they lost North Texas close as well. So Oregon State is actually favored in this game, even though they're a 2-loss team, up from 1 to 2.5. Maybe it's a little bit enticing for the public to want to come in and try to take a shot with Irvine, thinking that that's kind of like that's a sneaky underdog, man. Irvine, they're undefeated. Yeah, I don't really think so. 62% of the tickets, 95% of the cash on Oregon State. It looks like the money is coming in on Oregon State, so that is the way that I would look in that game if I was going to play it, which I'm not. We do have the Battle of Kentucky here. Trying to get through this as quickly as I can. Kentucky ranked 5th in the country. Louisville, I think, is kind of flying a little bit under the radar here. Although Kentucky is good, man. I mean, Kentucky's good on both sides of the ball. I could see maybe arguments that Louisville's the better defensive team here. If they are, it's not by much. Ken Baum has these teams ranked pretty close as far as defense. Kentucky is coming off a game where they didn't play well, but that was expected because they lost their first loss of the season, to Clemson, which I called that on my show. I didn't play it, unfortunately, but I liked Clemson in that game. Clemson likes to slow the pace way down and ugly it up, and then Kentucky had to play Gonzaga in the state of Washington right off of that first loss, but Gonzaga does play at Kentucky's preferred pace. They do like to play fast, and Kentucky had a big win there, big overtime win, so coming off of that, I think they were in a sandwich spot, and they did not play well against Colgate as a massive 31.5-point favorite. I think Kentucky really just went through the motions in this game. It didn't even show up, pretty much, and Colgate was hanging with them for like half the game before Kentucky, I guess, decided, well, we should probably turn it on and make sure we don't lose this game. So Kentucky coming off a very easy effort now coming into this game against Louisville. So the situation does set up for Kentucky decently in this game. Louisville, it kind of sets up decently for them, too. I faded Louisville in their last game. I thought that was a sandwich spot. They were coming off these big games against OU, Ole Miss, Duke, and then they played UTEP sandwiched in there, and UTEP almost caught them, and I got the win on UTEP plus the points, and that when UTEP had a chance to try to tie the game at the end, man, they were within one possession the last couple of times they had the ball at the end, and they took a decent look at a 3 at the end of the game there, and it rimmed out, and they lost the game there, and that could have tied it and sent it into overtime. So Louisville's coming off a close call as well. Both of these teams are coming off ugly games pretty much. So I think they're both going to show up focused here. But Kentucky, at least what you can say about them is they put in a lesser effort in their last game. But are they going to overlook Louisville at all? Because Louisville hasn't been playing that well. Louisville did lose one of their role players not that long ago. I don't know. Kentucky's down from 12 to 10, though. 77% of the tickets on the 59% of the cash. So it does look like the actual money is coming in and fading a public Kentucky team here. The market read looks like it is on the Louisville side there. I mean, I'm not going to get involved in this, but that's the way that I read the market there. What's up, Andrew? You're doing impressions of Dave Smith, Tim Pool, and then you're going to shave your stubble. Interesting. Oh, you're going to, all right, you're going to do an impression of me. Please do, man. Send it to me. Make sure I see it. I'm one of a kind, man. Can you impersonate me? I don't know. Probably you can. Next up, let me see. What's next up for me here? College basketball, man, it's always a slog to try to get through these. We're in the evening slate already, and there aren't as many games that I want to talk about left here. Next game up, my third of 4 plays here is Illinois plus 1.5. I know I'm fading the number 1 team in the nation, man, Tennessee, and I think Tennessee is probably at least a top 5 team, at least, maybe a top 3 team. They're good, even though they lost Dalton Connect. They're off to a really good start here. But in this game, the line looks like it's moving against Tennessee, down from 2.5 to 1.5. 54% of the tickets and 75% of the cash coming in on Illinois. So it looks like the legitimate money's coming in on Illinois. I don't even know if I buy this ticket percentage because I think the public can only look one way in this game, man. I mean, even though Illinois has been playing well, they're going to look at this and say, wait a minute, it's the number 1 team in the country, Tennessee, and they have the better record too, and you're telling me I just have to pick them to win the game, and they're undefeated? Yeah, give me Tennessee, right? That's what the public is going to think, and obviously I'm going to fade that sentiment. I mean, the odds makers are telling you that this is expected to be a very close game. Ken Baum does have Tennessee winning this game, I think by 2 or 3, so he does have Tennessee ranked as one of the top teams, not the number 1 team, but he does have Illinois not bad. I mean, Illinois is ranked kind of in the teens range. So Illinois, they've dropped out of the rankings, man. So this is another one where you have an unranked home team here where Illinois might go off the favorite in this game, man. If the line moves a little bit more, you could see Illinois wind up being the favorite when the game goes off. So you'd have another one of those home unranked favorites. And this one would be against the number 1 ranked team. And you know, when you're the number 1 ranked team, you got a target on your back, man. So Tennessee, it becomes more difficult to maintain that number 1 status. And this is a difficult spot for them because this is their first true road game. They're going to Illinois to Champaign. Is it Champaign or Champlain? I always forget which one it is, whichever it is. But maybe Illinois will break out the Champagne once they pull off this win here, and we'll see a court storming when they beat the number 1 team, even though it's not even going to be a huge upset if they do. Tennessee, I mean, is their resume really that impressive? I don't know. I mean, beating Louisville that badly is fairly impressive. And their other, it's their second true road game. My mistake, excuse me. They played at Louisville. So that was an impressive win at Louisville. But again, a true road game after you've not gone on the road very much this year at all, and you've had all these games not in true road environments. I do think it's a difficult spot. Other than that, their other impressive game is the one against Baylor. I mean, I don't think beating Virginia, Syracuse, Miami, I don't consider those to be as impressive. Those 3 teams are pretty down this year. So is Tennessee really deserving of that number 1 ranking? Probably not, even though Ken Pom does have them, again, like I said, as the number 2 or 3 team in the country. And I'm not going to say that that's not accurate. But Illinois, I think Illinois is underrated right now, man, because basically that loss to Northwestern kind of knocked them out of the rankings, and I was on Northwestern in that game. I told you it was a bad spot for Illinois coming off beating Arkansas, and then they had a game against Wisconsin up after that. I mean, that was a bad spot. That was a sandwich spot, and Northwestern likes to slow the game down, whereas Illinois likes to speed it up. And other than that, Illinois' only other loss was Alabama. I mean, I'm not going to knock them for that. They at least have 2 pretty solid wins against Arkansas and Wisconsin here. So I don't know. I would say maybe Illinois has the slightly more difficult schedule so far. Now they got number 1 Tennessee coming into their house, man. So Illinois, they're going to be focused on this, even though they're coming off a nice big conference win. That was a game that they probably should have won more easily than they did. So maybe, unfortunately for me, because I had Illinois in that game, maybe unfortunately for me, they started looking ahead to Tennessee a little bit towards the end of that game. I don't know. But I like Illinois here, and the other reason I like it, I just talked about pacing. Tennessee likes to play a slow pace. Illinois is the exact opposite. Illinois likes to speed the game way up And the home team, as I always say, usually has the easier time getting the game to go at their pace. And if Illinois is able to speed Tennessee up here, it's going to throw Tennessee out of their element. It's something that Kentucky tries to do when they host Tennessee as well. I think it might throw Tennessee off, man. And Illinois, actually, despite their fast pace, has actually played defense pretty well so far this year, which is unlike last year. Their defense was not very good. This year, it hasn't been that bad so far. So both of these two teams have actually been good on both sides of the ball this year, even though, yeah, Tennessee is the better team, as the odds makers are telling you, but I don't think it's by that much. So give me Illinois plus 1.5 in that one. I'm saying that I expect them to win the game. Champlain is the lake, so it's Champagne in this one. I don't know. I'm not sure which. No, you're right. It's between Lake Champlain is between New York, and it's on the New York-Vermont border, and the northern part of Lake Champlain also borders Canada. I've been up there, man. I've been to Burlington, Vermont. I've been into Canada that way. I've gone up to Montreal that way. I've been there's like a weird like peninsula that juts down from Canada. It's actually part of Vermont, I think, that goes into kind of the middle of Lake Champlain. I've been on that, too. I've driven up through Burlington and then crossed Lake Champlain, basically, into New York and then gone up to Montreal that way. So I've been in that area before, and it's very rural up there. It's a lot of farms. There are a lot of cows up there, man. A lot of stuff going on up there. And then it's basically rural all the way until you get to Montreal, and then all of a sudden there's like a mountain that comes. It's like all flat rural land, and then there's just a mountain with a city around it that rises from out of nowhere, and that's Montreal. Kind of crazy. Oh crap, I was not sharing. I'm sorry, man. I was not sharing my screen this whole time. My apologies, man. All right, let's get back to finish college basketball here. What else we got? I mean, McNeese is at number 25, Mississippi State. I don't want to say much about this game, but it could be an interesting battle. I mean, McNeese probably is not as bad as the 5-4 record that they are that they have right now. I mean, Mississippi State definitely good, ranked 25th. They're only a one-loss team. Magnolia Madness in this tournament in Mississippi. It's in Tupelo, Mississippi, which is, I believe, where Elvis is from, maybe, if I'm not mistaken. I don't even know, but it is. It's the Elvis tournament. It is not at Mississippi State's home arena, but it is a semi-home game for them. Weird game there for them, man. And as far as the market read in that one, we got Mississippi State sitting at 9. Not a whole lot of movement on that. I mean, McNeese may be flying a little bit under the radar again, and their record may not be indicative of what they actually are. I think they're still a pretty competitive team, so we'll see what happens in that game. Mississippi State, I mean, they don't really have anything that they're coming off of. They didn't play well against Prairie View is what they're coming off of, so they do maybe have a reason to refocus after that. And McNeese coming off an easy game against the L Train. I have no idea what conference this is. Le Tourneau, which is, I don't know who the hell they are. Not a Division I team. So, whatever. I just figured I'd call out that game. Similar for Grand Canyon and Georgia. This, I think, is in that Hoops Giving tournament in Atlanta as well, so it's semi-home for Georgia. But Georgia, I mean, Grand Canyon might be flying under the radar a little bit, too. Georgia's extremely public. 96% of the tickets, 99% of the cash. They're down from 8 to 6.5. Grand Canyon, at the very least, is definitely a competitive team. And I think Georgia may be a little bit overrated right now at an 8-1 record. I mean, they have one big win against St. John's. They beat Georgia Tech, which is a rivalry game, but not that impressive. Georgia Tech's not that good. And they lost to Marquette. Beating Notre Dame, I don't think is that impressive either. So Georgia, they've not really faced a very difficult schedule, I will say. Grand Canyon, not really either, but I mean, they played Arizona State. Western Kentucky is not that bad. UC Davis is kind of decent. Norfolk is at least not bad for a very low conference team, and then beating Stanford, not that bad. Neither team really has a very difficult schedule so far, so I don't know what else to say about that. And that 11 o'clock game is tipped off, by the way. So I'm going live during some of these games now. And I got to get this done and get my college bowl picks in for the early bowls here before it's too late, man. So last game up. Oh, and by the way, I should say Illinois is also undefeated at home at the very least, by the way. So Tennessee's running into a pretty good home team there. It's where Elvis is from. Hell yeah, all right. I got my geography, history right there. My last play is going to be laying the points with Dayton. This is another one, man, where who's going to want to come in and lay points with Dayton? I got Dayton -1 here. If you want to go money line on this, that might make sense too. Anything around basically just picking the team to win the game, I think is fine. You got number 6 Marquette against an unranked Dayton team, and Dayton is laying points. It's another one of those situations, man, with an unranked road underdog in this one. And yeah, I'm saying give me Dayton. The line is flipped from Dayton being a 1-point dog to a 1-point favorite. They got 67% of the cash, or tickets, which I don't buy. 82% of the cash. I do not buy that the public is not coming in on Marquette in this game, man. I mean, the public can only come in and take Marquette here, right, for the most part. I mean, who's going to come in and fade a one-loss ranked number 6 Marquette? Oh, Memphis is already off to a good start. I hate that. It feels like I'm leaving money on the table because I said I liked Memphis to cover in that one. Man, Marquette, but who's going to want to, look at this game and it's basically pick the winner. You think the public is going to take Dayton, even though they're 8-2. They are undefeated at home, but Marquette's ranked 6th in the country and they're 9-1. So yeah, I think the public's only going to go one way with this, but I don't like the spot for Marquette here, man. I mean, they face a difficult schedule. Maryland's good. Purdue, nice win there. Georgia, as I said, I mean, they're not great, but that's not a bad win there. And then they face Iowa State, which I thought was not the greatest spot for Marquette, and I liked Iowa State in that one, actually. Didn't play it, but Iowa State was able to beat them by margin. Then coming off of that, Marquette won in their Wisconsin rivalry, where I think they always kind of consider Wisconsin to be their bigger brother, regardless of the rankings. I mean, that's the University of Wisconsin, and Marquette beat them at Marquette. So Marquette's coming off a huge game against Wisconsin. And then after they have to go on the road to Dayton, which is only going to be their 3rd true road game. They did win at Maryland, which I actually faded Marquette in that game. Maryland could have had that game. And then they lost. I think this was at Iowa State. I'm not even sure. Was this a true road game? It was. It was at Ames, Iowa. So this is their 3rd true road game now, but it's coming on the heels of that big win over Wisconsin, a ranked Wisconsin rivalry matchup there. And then after this, 4 days from now, they have to start Big East play. So do you really think they're going to have full focus on a Dayton team that's from a lower conference, the A-10? I'm going to say no. I think it's a sandwich spot that Marquette is in here. I think they might overlook Dayton, even though Dayton does have a good record. Dayton did beat UConn, the returning champs. Dayton did also play competitively against North Carolina and Iowa State, but I just think that they're still Dayton, and they could still get overlooked in a scheduling spot like Marquette is in there. So Dayton, I think, is pretty undervalued right now. They're a pretty good team, man. I mean, they've had a pretty competitive schedule so far, and have not done bad, really. Stepping up in class, I mean, they beat Northwestern, lost to UNC by 2, to Iowa State by 5, and beat UConn by 18. So, I mean, Dayton, it's a fairly impressive resume for Dayton so far, and they're coming off an easy win over Lehigh coming into this game. And they got number 6 Marquette coming into their place. This is a big game on their schedule. It's one of their biggest remaining games, if not the biggest on the schedule. I think Marquette probably a little bit overrated at this point as well. I don't think they're really the 6th best team in the country. And Marquette likes to play real fast. So you got a pacing collision here too, because Dayton does not. Dayton likes to play real slow. So again, you have a pacing collision here where Marquette could be thrown into like this half-court ugly game, which is what Dayton likes to do, and ugly up the game here. So give me Dayton in this game, man. I'll take Dayton to win this game. Dayton -1. Give me it. Give me it, baby. Nate Zilla. Yeah, what's up, Nate? Toadster. Yeah, I'm Roadster. Who will build the Toads? The tip-off is, every Jew's favorite part of the game. I don't understand that exactly, but you mean because it's like when the money starts to be made? I don't know, man. I don't fully get the reference, but let me finish this out. Let me talk about a couple of the rest of these games real quick. I mean, Colorado State VCU, I guess, is kind of a big game. I think Colorado State is really not as good as people think they are this year, man. I think they're down this year based on how the odds makers are lining them. They got VCU up from 5.5 to 6, which this game, I don't know if this game is on the road or what it is, but no, it's in Henderson, Nevada. It's in the Jack Jones tournament there, so it's a neutral site game, and it is easier for Colorado State, though, because they're in the Mountain time zone, going to the Pacific time zone, still kind of playing in the Mountain region there. So Colorado, they're right in Colorado's, like, Colorado State's geographic area. So it is easier for Colorado State, I think, to be playing in that location. But Colorado State, I think, again, their record looks decent, but they're not a very good team this year. The odds makers are telling you VCU is the better team, despite being on the road. But Colorado State does have 65% of tickets, 98% of the cash. Don't know if I agree with that, because the line has moved kind of against where it looks like the cash percentage is right now. So maybe that's not actually accurate. I would not want to come in and try to take Colorado State in that one. I don't really have anything else to say about that one, I don't think. I don't know about the scheduling spot there. VCU just beat Penn, whatever. Colorado State, I think, is coming off their rivalry game, though. Yeah, they are, which they lost at Colorado, which I believe was their first true road game of the season. So they might be in a more difficult spot for that reason, because that's a game they stepped up for and they didn't really play well. So off of that game, that's the type of game that might hang you over more than it would like have you bouncing back coming off of that, because that's a game you get up for. And then if you don't play well, it's like, you're a little bit defeated coming into the next game. Number 8 Gonzaga is playing number 18 UConn at Madison Square Garden. So it is a better location for UConn. I would say it's almost like a semi-home environment for UConn there. Another semi there in whatever tournament this is. Gonzaga's coming off a big game, man, out on the West Coast where they played against Kentucky. I believe this game was in Seattle, Washington, something like that. So Gonzaga lost the game in overtime. That was a big game and big loss. And now they have to travel out to New York City to face UConn. It doesn't look like the easiest spot, man. And Gonzaga, they like to play real fast, and UConn does not. UConn likes to play real slow, so UConn could really kind of ugly up this game and try to get Gonzaga into a half-court game, which they don't like to play in this Hall of Fame series in New York. So I would kind of look to the UConn side there for those reasons. UConn kind of bouncing back from that ugly stretch, or UConn probably not as good as they were last year. I mean, I don't think they're going to win a championship again. Losing to Colorado is the most egregious loss. They're not very good. Memphis and Dayton are both not that bad. UConn bounced back, though, and they were able to get a nice win over Baylor. They went on the road, and they beat Texas and beat me. I thought Texas was going to be a hard opponent for them to go face, and they did not have a bad game at all in that game. Now they're coming off that, and they get Gonzaga. Obviously, they're going to be focused on Gonzaga coming into their place, regardless of the fact that Gonzaga and UConn have kind of like, I think they've crossed paths maybe in the tournament at least once over the last couple of years, and I think UConn was able to win that game. I think that was 2 years ago, but I don't think the extra motivation from UConn beating them in the tournament 2 years ago is really that much of a motivator. The fact that UConn is the returning champs might be kind of a motivator for Gonzaga. The market indicators do look like they're on Gonzaga, up from 1.5 to 2.5 with juice. 66% of the tickets, 80% of the cash, but I'm not sure that I fully buy that or agree with it. So I'm going to stay away from that game. And then you got the Battle of Oklahoma. Man, this video's already over an hour. I know I had audio issues. This is crazy. College basketball. I got to start doing college basketball at night. This game, Oklahoma's ranked 13th in the country. I think Oklahoma State's flying a little bit under the radar now, though. This game is a neutral site game in Oklahoma City, I think. Oklahoma's down from 5.5 to 5. 57% of the tickets on, but 68% of the cash coming in on Oklahoma State. So the market read does look like it's towards taking the points with Oklahoma State in this one. I don't necessarily disagree with it. There isn't really much to take away from the scheduling aspect of this, so I think it's just a game where both teams are going to show up, and maybe what the market read is telling you is that Oklahoma State's maybe a little bit underrated, and maybe Oklahoma's a little bit overrated now. Creighton is at Alabama. Creighton, I think, is kind of down this year. I don't know. Alabama, kind of a big favorite here, but Alabama's coming off a big win over North Carolina, where I lost that game too. Alabama's an 11.5-point favorite in this one. It's possible Creighton is going to have a better game here. Creighton at least showed me something where they beat me in this UNLV game. I thought that was a sandwich spot. Creighton had just beaten number 1 ranked Kansas, and they had this game against Alabama up after playing UNLV. I thought they were going to get caught against UNLV, and they didn't. So that at least shows me something, that Creighton is playing well, even in bad spots. Alabama's up from 11 to 11.5. 50% of tickets evenly split, and 56% of the cash on Creighton. So whatever you want to think about that. And St. Mary's and Boise is a pretty interesting one, too, with St. Mary's up from 1.5 to 2.5 with juice. 67% of tickets on them, but 76% of the cash on Boise. So the money looks like it came in to drive the line up on St. Mary's, and now it looks like the cash percentage is going against them. I don't know, man. I mean, St. Mary's just went into elevation, had a pretty nice win against Utah. Now they're coming back out of that, and they're playing. Where's this game at? I don't even know. This is in Idaho Falls, Idaho, so it's a semi-home game for Boise, I guess. Boise may be flying a little bit under the radar right now. I think they're a pretty good team, maybe better than this record would indicate. And Boise's coming off a loss to Washington State, which You think Washington State, well, it's a big conference team, right? Well, maybe not anymore. They're in the WCC, and Boise was actually an 8.5-point favorite in that game. So they're coming off kind of an ugly loss in a game that they should have won as a favorite. So I do, oh, excuse me, I'm still dealing with like sinus crap, man. It just won't go away. I still agree with Boise in that one. And then this game, Prairie View and Loyola Marymount, by the way, this game, Prairie View is coming up hanging with Mississippi State, man. It's a 38.5-point underdog. Prairie View didn't go away, and they actually had the lead at one point in the second half with like 10 minutes left. That's just insane. Mississippi State didn't show up for this game at all, and then they finally turned it on and put them away. But that's a massive monster performance for Prairie View, and they have UCLA up next, and they're playing all these games away from home. And I'm thinking, this is an awful spot for them, right? You got to come in and lay the points with Loyola Marymount here. And then I'm looking, oh shit, Loyola Marymount just upset Nevada as a double-digit underdog. So both teams are in letdown spots, so I can't do it. So in this game, I recommend looking at the over. Let me see here. Loyola Marymount is sitting at 18.5. I mean, the total up from 156.5 up to 158. So it does look like some money is coming on the over. In agreement with me on that one. And that's going to do it for college basketball. Let's go to NBA here. We have two games here on tap. Atlanta at Milwaukee. I don't have much of a read in either of these games, man, in the NBA. Bucks are up from 3.5 to 4, 64% of the cash on 59% of the tickets. So it does look like the money coming in on the Bucks side, and maybe the Bucks are a little bit undervalued at this point. I mean, they're laying 4.5. Oddsmakers telling you they're the better team. This is part of the in-season tournament. I don't really care about that. I mean, I expect both teams to show up. It's just a matter of the Bucks. The oddsmakers are telling you they're the better team, even though the record wouldn't really show you that. I mean, Atlanta has been beating good teams this year, so Atlanta definitely competitive against good teams. They're coming off a big win over the Knicks, though, but this game is also big, so what can you really take away from that? I don't know. And Milwaukee just beat Orlando, and I think failed to cover. I think I was on Milwaukee in that game, and they failed to cover against an Orlando team that was very shorthanded now without Wagner, in addition to being without Banchero. So maybe Milwaukee is going to bounce back a little bit and play better from that game. I don't know. And then you got Rockets, Thunder, two pretty good NBA games today, really. Thunder up from 5.5 to 6, 71% of tickets, 81% of the cash. So the money looks like it is coming in on both home teams here. Both teams are going to show up for this, too. Houston is coming off a win over Golden State. I mean, they're playing well right now. They're playing a second straight big game, but it's not like they're going to overlook Oklahoma City, especially when they don't have anything up next. But Oklahoma City might show up because Oklahoma City did just lose to Houston last time they played. Oklahoma City beat them earlier in the season, and then Houston got them back in this game in Houston. So now this game is at Oklahoma City, where Oklahoma City did beat them the first time they played. Oklahoma City, though, they're coming off a nice revenge win over Dallas. They beat the returning conference champs, who were the team that eliminated Oklahoma City last year. So that was a big win for Oklahoma City. So are they going to be in a letdown spot? And because they have 4 straight wins, is this extra time off because they have an extra day of rest over what Houston has? Is that going to kind of disrupt their momentum? I mean, maybe. I'm not going to come in and try to play Oklahoma City there, man. I'm just going to stay away. NHL, Rangers and Kings is weird, man. The Rangers are down from minus 128 to minus 106. 51% of the tickets on the Kings, but 81% of the cash on the Rangers. So it looks like the cash percentage is heavily on the Rangers, but the line has moved in the other direction. I don't know how to interpret this at all, man. Very difficult to interpret this game. The Kings coming off a tough loss to the Devils, whereas I think the Rangers, they're really looking for wins at this one because they've just been sliding so much, and they just got a win against Buffalo to break a losing streak. So scheduling-wise, to me, it seems like it's a better spot slightly for the Rangers side, but I don't know, man. And then Philadelphia, Minnesota, we have big market movement against Minnesota, down from minus 178 to minus 148. 78% of the tickets and 91% of the cash, though, on Minnesota. But I would agree more with the line moving this one than the fading of Minnesota rather than trying to take them, which is where it looks like the cash is right now. And Minnesota's coming off a big game, even though, yes, they got completely smacked by Edmonton, but is that the type of loss where you're going to be embarrassed and actually show up and bounce back from it? Or are you going to be looking ahead to playing Vegas tomorrow and then Florida after that, and you just came off the Edmonton game? It looks like maybe it's kind of a sandwich for Minnesota, but the reason I don't want to come in and actually play Philly is because there is that chance that Minnesota got so embarrassed in that game that they might actually show up in this game. Philadelphia coming off a nice win over Detroit, but they're starting a road trip here, I believe. So usually when you start a road trip, you want to kick it off on the right foot. So you are focused on that first game of the road trip. So I do agree with the Philadelphia side in that one, but haven't played it. Vegas and Edmonton, I would probably look to fade Edmonton in this one just because Edmonton, coming off that win where they embarrassed Minnesota, they absolutely smashed them. So they might be feeling a little bit plump and gay here coming off that. And they do have, look what they have up next, though, man. They have, do I want to play? I might play this, actually. I totally didn't see this aspect of it. Look at what they have up next, man. They haven't played Florida yet this year, right? Have they? I don't think they have. This is the Stanley Cup rematch, man, where they have Florida up after this. What could be bigger than that? Even though I know they lost to Vegas. Vegas is a big game, but you just smashed Minnesota, and you got Florida up next in 2 days, man. I think they're going to be looking ahead to that. I mean, that is a huge Stanley Cup rematch. Just make sure that they haven't played Florida yet this year. With Vegas, I mean, yeah, they're 0-2 against Vegas this year, and that is a big matchup still, but I mean, Vegas playing really well right now, but I think the spot is pretty bad for Edmonton there. But Vegas, I'm going to stay away because Vegas, they're also coming off a big win over Winnipeg, and they got Minnesota up next, which is a big game as well. So they're in kind of a situation where they're playing a whole string of big games too, and they beat Dallas the game before that, so I'll stay away. I mean, does that mean you should look to the over in this game? I don't really know. I'm not going to do it. I mean, it's down from 6.5 juice to the under to 6 juice to the over. 86% of the tickets and 91% of the cash on the over, though. In Edmonton, down from -150 to -148. But they do have 94% of the cash and 67% of the tickets. So, I don't know. Oh, the tip-off, yeah, I get it. Circumcision. I can't believe that joke flew over my head, man. I absolutely get it. LA Kings are on fire. That's true. Vegas does like to bully Edmonton. That's true as well. So maybe Edmonton will still show up for that game and be pissed off. I'm staying away from that one completely. Let's see. The next game up is a game I'm actually on, which is the Pittsburgh Penguins. I almost said Steelers. Plus 118. Give me the Penguins in this one. Ottawa, this is simple. They're on a back-to-back. And what did they do yesterday? They went into Carolina, and they beat Carolina on Pride Night. When you get Carolina being plump and gay, literally there in that one, man. When you're in Prime Night, man, I think it's a bad thing. Prime Night is just so stupid, man. And Carolina, I mean, I'm happy that Carolina had such a bad game there because it's laughable. You can just laugh at Pride Night being so stupid. And Ottawa went and beat them, and now it sets you up with a chance to fade Ottawa. And I mentioned this yesterday. If Ottawa goes in and they play well against Carolina, fade them today against Pittsburgh because they're playing the third game in 4 days, and they had to travel. They went from Ottawa down to Carolina, had to travel down there for that one game, and now they have to travel back home with no time off of a big win over Carolina. And this game statistically was not really indicative of how the game went. I don't see where's the game cast here? Here it is. Carolina outshot them, although granted they were losing the game for most of it. They also out-hit them, although they lost the face-off percentage. But Carolina, the game was not really a 3-0 type of loss there. And Ottawa coming off that, I don't know if it's going to be Allmark in net, although if it is Allmark playing on a back-to-back, that's not what you want. But if it's not him in net, it's Forsberg, and Forsberg has been significantly worse than Allmark. So either goaltender situation you're going to get from Ottawa here is going to be bad. You're either going to get Allmark playing a second straight game, or you're going to get Forsberg, who's the worst goalie. So that's also an advantage to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh has 1 day off, and they went into Montreal, and yeah, they smashed Montreal 9-2. Montreal does suck, though. So I really think that's just kind of a momentum-continuing win, and it means Pittsburgh has a day off and less travel because they're already in Canada, and they just have to go from Montreal to Ottawa. So this sets up much more nicely for Pittsburgh in this game. Give me the Penguins. Ottawa's down from -140 to -128. 69% of the tickets, 91% of the cash. I'm obviously not buying the cash percentage there. I'm rolling with the market movement there and the situation. I'm taking the Penguins. Yeah, North Carolina, unfortunately, is becoming way more gay. Yeah, Ottawa had more pride there. Maybe Ottawa was just more pumped because, like, oh, everything's gay here. We like that. We're from Canada. Let's do that. Yeah. All right. Buffalo, Washington. This game, I don't know if I was going to talk about this game, really. It's kind of interesting, at least. I mean, Washington coming off a game where they barely got by Columbus. Buffalo coming off a game where they lost close to the New York Rangers. So it does look like a spot where Washington may show up in this game because they're coming off a close call, whereas Buffalo coming off a big performance as an underdog. Washington down, up from -174 to -179. 76% of the tickets, 91% of the cash on them. I would not try to fade Washington in that spot, is what I will say. in that one. Next up is a game where one of my patented, these two teams are total shit, and they're in shit spots. Let's play an over. Anaheim, Columbus, I'm going over in this one. And again, as I always say, with two bad teams like this, what the public tends to overlook is that these teams are bad, not because they can't score necessarily, but it means that their defense and goaltending isn't very good. And look at the spot that Anaheim is in, man. They're playing a fourth straight road game, third game in 4 days, fourth game in 6 days, all in different cities. So do you think their defense is going to be gassed? I think it will be. In spots like this, it tends to affect the defense more than the scoring. They're coming off a close call against a good Toronto team, losing that game. It looks like they're alternating between goalies. I don't care about that. Neither of their goalies are that good between Gibson and Dostal, or however you pronounce it. And they got Winnipeg up next, which might be a game that they might focus more on than Columbus. On the Columbus side, Columbus is also in that bad spot, as I already pointed out. They just took Washington into overtime, man. And that was a game where they had returned home the previous game. Returning home from a road trip, always a difficult, distracted spot, and they lost to Philadelphia. And I think I played Philadelphia in that game. It was an easy win for me. Columbus was also coming up beating Winnipeg to finish the road trip. So this was a sandwich spot, and they stepped up and they played well against Washington, taking them into overtime. And now coming off of that, looks like Lickens is going to be back in net, however you pronounce that. Sounds like a terrible, terrible name, Lickens. But Greaves played the last game, so probably their primary goaltender will be back in this game, but their goalies are not that good, man. And look what they have up next, Carolina, tomorrow. So they're in a bad spot too, man. Both teams are in bad spots, and when that happens, I'm looking over. The line's gone down a little bit from 6.5 juice to the under to 6 juice to the over. I do see 60% of tickets and only 57% of the cash on the over, but I like the over in this one. You have to pay a little bit extra for it. It looks like a minus 118 right now, but that's what I'm doing. So you can give me that one. I will say I like the Colorado side, but I haven't played it. Colorado coming off an ugly loss to Utah. And again, that was a return home spot, but they were returning from a long road trip. And you know, just like I said, tends to be a distracted spot where you don't play well when you're returning home. You have home life to get back to, especially if it's a not very good opponent. You might overlook them, and they lost bad to Utah. So I think even though Nashville hasn't been playing well, I think that sets up a nice spot for Colorado to bounce back. When you play really badly in that first game back, you tend to be focused in your next game, and you're staying at home now. You just got punched in the mouth. You want to fix things and turn things around. And Nashville, coming into this game, coming into elevation off winning 4-1 in Dallas. So you got Nashville pulled off a 4-1 upset against Colorado, who got upset 4-1. The spot is a whole lot better for Colorado here. It's a bad travel spot for Nashville, too, going into elevation. So I would only look to the Colorado side, but the market looks very against it, and I am confused as to why. Colorado down from minus 170 to minus 165. 69% of the tickets on 71% of the cash, though, on the side of Nashville. And again, I don't fully understand that, to be honest. So, whoops, I just closed the tab. It's not what I wanted to do. So I don't get it. And then to finish this off, actually, I have two more plays. Boston, my Boston Bruins, I'm going with them plus 120. I don't like the spot for Vancouver in this one. I think it is a sandwich spot for Vancouver here. Looking at Vancouver, they're coming off a game where they just beat Florida 4-0. I mean, they embarrassed the returning champs and shut them out. Now they have Boston, who's been kind of struggling, and they got a big Western Conference matchup against Colorado up next in 2 days. I'm going to come in and take the Bruins here. The Bruins coming off an ugly couple of games. They've lost their last two games by a combined score of 13-2. Give me a break, man. And speaking of breaks, Swayman at least had a break in their last game. He only played in the first game, which was the worst of the two games, but it was against Winnipeg, who is a great team. Seattle, I mean, that's an embarrassing loss, man. And Korpisalo was in net there. He sucks. So you're going to get a rested Swayman back in this game in net, and you're probably going to get a focused, embarrassed effort out of the Bruins here. They're going to be pissed after you lose 8-1 to anybody, but you also lose 5-1 to Seattle. Speaking of gay, Seattle and Climate Pledge Arena there, I think Boston's going to bounce back here, man. Vancouver's down from minus 128 to minus 126. 53% of tickets, 95% of the cash on the side of Boston. Give me Boston plus 120 in that one. And then to finish this out, another one of these patented, these teams suck, let's go over, when they're both in bad spots. Utah, San Jose, over 6 at minus 112, I guess. This one looks like it's staying right at 6 juice to the over. 67% of tickets, 62% of the cash on the over. I don't know how to read that, really. And Utah's down up from minus 170 to minus 182. I guess that's how bad San Jose still is, that Utah's a big road favorite. 77% of tickets, 97% of the cash. I looked at this, and I'm like, at first, well, yeah, Utah's in a bad spot. But so I kind of want to go against them here, but it looks like the cash is coming in on their side. Why? Well, it's because both teams are in bad spots. Utah, I mean, look at what they just did. They took Minnesota to a shootout. That was a big performance for them. Then they beat Colorado in their last game, and now they're coming out of elevation, having to go down to the Pacific Coast, and they got Vancouver and then Minnesota up next, which are both bigger games. When you're Utah, I mean, Utah's got a nice record, actually, right now, at above 500. They could overlook this not very good San Jose team, man, and it may not be Vejmelka in net in this one. I don't know, because they've had a bunch of games here. It may be Stauber in net. I'm not really sure I care which goalie is in net, although Vejmelka is their better goaltender, so I'd rather, for the over purposes, have it be Stauber, but I don't really care that much. I think it's a sandwich spot that Utah is in, but then looking at San Jose, so I was like, oh, maybe it makes sense to grab the money line with San Jose here. I'm not really sure I think so, because San Jose is returning home from a long road trip, and I always say it tends to be a distracted spot. You're on the road for a long time. They've been on the road since November 30th, so they were on the road for almost 2 weeks. Does that even make sense? And now they're finally returning home. I think a long extended time off like that means they're not going to be focused on this game. They're going to have a lot of stuff to do, which may be why the money seems to be coming in on Utah. They did win to finish the road trip against St. Louis. Who really cares about that? Even though St. Louis playing a little bit better under Montgomery. San Jose has been alternating between 3 goalies here, so I don't think that is a big deal either. Unnecessarily here. I mean, that just means that they kind of don't have a very good goaltender there. They just kind of alternate. It does mean you'll get a rested goalie, but I don't really care that much. Their goalies are not very formidable. I actually played an over in this game against St. Louis because I thought it was a bad spot for San Jose, kind of unrested at the end of a road trip there off big games against Tampa, Florida, Carolina, Washington as well. Well, now they're in the return home spot, which you have home life to get back to. You may not be totally focused on a mediocre team like Utah, and then they have Winnipeg up next, so they may be looking ahead too, man. San Jose, they're kind of in the middle of a lost season here, most likely, so maybe they'll be more focused on that Winnipeg game. But, I mean, when you play the over, you do kind of want focus as far as, like, these teams are going to try to score, but you want the defenses to be unrested, so that's where I'm going there. Over 6 in that one, and that's the end of my plays. Dostal was leading the NHL goals above expected. So you mean he's does that mean he's overperforming though, or underperforming? Does that mean that based on his play he should actually be doing better, or does that mean that he just sucks and he's allowing way more goals? I don't know, man. Yeah, Climate Pledge Arena, very, very gay. It's stupid. I do want them to still get an NBA team back there though. I want the Supersonics, man. All right, let's look at college football. We got 3 games I'm going to talk about here. 1 game, not a bowl game. It is the big annual Army-Navy game with Army. Both teams had a really good season this year, man. Army ranked at 22. This game is in Landover, Maryland, so it is closer to Navy. Navy from Annapolis, I believe. But, I mean, these teams are used to playing this game. They play this game every year. I think it might be in this location every year, too. I'm not really sure. Maybe I'm wrong about that. This is a big game for both teams, man. No matter what you might say, I think both of these teams, I might look to fade them as far as the bowls are concerned because, well, maybe not Army because Marshall has basically dropped their entire team. The entire team left, which I'll talk about when I talk about whatever bowl that is. So maybe I don't want to fade Army, but Army, Navy, I mean, I think this is going to basically be the bowl game for both of these teams, man. This is not only just a big rivalry game, but I think it's even bigger this year because both teams had such good seasons. They both were undefeated late into the season. They were both in the rankings late into the season. So I think this game means a little bit more. And the winner of this game is going to win the Commander-in-Chief trophy because I believe both of these teams already beat Air Force, who sucked this year. So this is going to be a big game, man. It's always big, but this year in particular, I think it's going to be even bigger. And how do we look at this game from a handicapping perspective? Well, I'm not going to play the game, but Army is up from 3.5 to 6.5. And at this point, I think the value is probably on the Navy side because you got a low total, 40.5 down to 39.5, juice to the under, 63% of tickets, 59% of the cash on the under. I also like the under here because here's the thing. Army-Navy, you can almost blindly play their games under. They're almost always extremely low scoring, which is why this total is so low. But you might say, but these teams put up a lot of points in a lot of games this year. And they both actually have passing attacks this year, which is something different from Army and Navy, with Navy with the wing T and Army actually able to throw the ball a little bit too. That's true, but here's the thing. Army and Navy, they both really know how to defend the triple option because they both run the triple option, so they both defend against it in practice week in and week out pretty much. So that tends to be a huge factor when they play each other. Both teams really know how to stop the triple option, so it tends to make these games lower scoring. Because both teams are running the ball so much, it also means the game becomes low scoring as well, even though I know Army, I think, does run kind of a fast pace this year. I don't know if Navy does, but so I do like the under in this one, but that also is kind of why I also like Navy, because when you get fewer points here you expected in the game, you kind of want to look towards the underdog. Army is very public. I mean, they have the better record. They're the ranked team, so the public's going to come in on Army. Army, 85% of tickets and cash. The public's going to look at Navy and see that Navy really fell off. But look at what happened to Navy, man. They were rolling along, and I think they actually faced a more difficult schedule than Army did for most of the season, because at least they beat Memphis, even though Memphis is not as good as we think they are. That was still not that bad of a game. Then, yeah, I mean, both teams have faced pretty weak schedules, and Navy ran into Notre Dame. They both did. They both got smashed by Notre Dame. And then Navy, I think people are going to dock them for losing to Rice, but they were coming off that first loss of the season, the end of their undefeated season. They got up emotionally for that Notre Dame game, and they got smashed, man. So I think they were just in a bad spot coming out of that game, and they got caught by Rice. So that's how I explain that one. They bounced back nicely after that and won. Then they got smashed by Tulane. So the public is going to come in and look at this and think, wait a minute, Army just destroyed Tulane in the American Athletic Conference championship game. Army won the conference, and they smashed Tulane, and that same Tulane team smashed Navy and beat them 35-0. So of course we want Army here, right? Army beat Tulane badly, and Tulane beat Navy badly, so Army should blow out Navy here, right? That's what the public thinks, but again, football doesn't work this way, man. You can't do that, like apply that transitive property. Every game is different. The odds makers are telling you Army's the better team, but still, I mean, you got to look at the individual situation. What happened in this Navy game, by the way? Oh, yeah, they lost their quarterback, Blake Horvath, the Horvath. He's a good dual-threat quarterback, and he has an arm, man. I mean, he's a huge part of their offense, and he went down in that game, and they had no offense, no offense after he went down. So that's what happened in that game, man. And then they were able to bounce back again and beat East Carolina to finish the season. So Navy able to bounce back, and Horvath didn't play in that game either, I don't think, and he will be back in this game. So you might say, oh, but that's the reverse injured player theory spot, right? That means we're going to get value going against the team when their star quarterback comes back. Yeah, but this is Army-Navy, man. It's not like Navy is going to be like, oh, our star quarterback is back. Now we can take our foot off the gas a little bit. That's not going to happen here. This is Army-Navy. This is a huge game. So having Horvath back can only help Navy, man. So I don't think that's a bad thing. And then Army, yeah, they crushed Tulane, but Tulane looked like they just stopped trying at the end of the season, man. I don't know what Tulane was doing in those last two games, and Tulane looked like maybe they couldn't handle the cold weather either, though, so that was just bad for Tulane. Tulane just fell apart at the end of the season, so I don't know. I lost on Tulane there, and Tulane, just an embarrassing performance from them. I don't know how to even read that game, but Army, aside from this Notre Dame game and the Tulane game, Army was at least like a 6 or 6.5 point favorite in every other game this season. And I know they are in this game against Navy, but I think Navy is the third best team that they're going to face all season. Besides Notre Dame, and that's how weak their schedule is, man. Besides Notre Dame and Tulane, I think Navy is the most difficult team they're going to have faced on the schedule. So I like Navy for that reason as well. And to finish it off, I think Navy with the wing T offense there, I know both teams like to throw the ball a little bit, like more than what these teams usually do, which is an added wrinkle that both teams added this year. But Navy has more of a wrinkle, man, with the wing T, with their new coach there who brought in that new system. They throw the ball more than Army does, and Army might not actually be used to defending that. So I think that added wrinkle that Navy has there with Horvath in there might help Navy more than it's going to help Army with Army's quarterback there. I mean, Army's quarterback is also good. They got Bryson Daly there. He's a good dual threat quarterback as well. You need that good dual threat there when you run these new offensive schemes like that. But all that being said, I do lean to the Navy side and the under in that one. Yeah, you can't apply, the trans property if you're plumping gay. You can't do that. Navy is always plummeted. Yeah, well, they're the midshipmen. I mean, what do you want? Yeah, the Celebration Bowl. I'm going to talk about that right now. Dostal is, that means he's overperforming big time, so that's good. So another good thing for me playing the over there. The Hot Sauce Podcast, I have no idea, man. I just don't have any time. I got to get this done, and I got to get my bowl picks in. I have to pick these 2 games here. Let me get these games done quickly. Jackson State, South Carolina State is the Celebration Bowl. It is in Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, where it usually is. Not really an advantage location-wise one way or the other, but we got strong market indicators on South Carolina State, man. If you miss South Carolina State at the better numbers, that's unfortunate because I do like the South Carolina State side here. They've flipped from a 1.5 point dog to now a 3-point favorite going through the 3.5. 68% of the cash and 56% of the tickets. So the cash looks like it's pouring in on South Carolina State. I agree with it. In this one, the Celebration Bowl is always between 2 teams that aren't. It's not even listed here. Oh, because I'm not even looking at, they're not even FBS teams. So how do I even look at this game? Well, I'll just tell you. Jackson State has the better record on the season. I think they're either a 1 or 2 loss team on the season. South Carolina State, I think, has 2 or 3 losses. So South Carolina State has the worst record. But the odds makers are telling you South Carolina State is actually the better team, even though they line them as a small underdog at first. The money is pouring in on their side. I agree with it. And South Carolina State, I think they're being docked because they started off poorly early in the season. They had some new faces there that needed to gain some chemistry. And once they gained some chemistry, they were off to the races, man. So I like the South Carolina State team in this game. Jackson State is kind of still riding not only what their record looks like this year. Yeah, they've been a good team this year. Both of these teams, again, they're like low-tier FCS teams. So I don't really know the purpose of the Celebration Bowl, really. But these teams are always from like the MEAC and the SWAC and whatever. So I don't really get it, but they get a national TV audience. This is coming up in 15 minutes, by the way. I got to make this pick. I'm picking South Carolina State in my bowl pools, by the way, if that wasn't obvious. Jackson State, again, they're riding what their record looks like, but they're also riding because they had Deion Sanders as their coach up until he left to go to Colorado. Deion Prime time was there in Jackson State up until then, man. He's gone, although they've been playing well with him not there as well. I think he was last there in 2021, and Jackson State did actually lose this bowl game to South Carolina State in 2021, I believe, in Deion's last year. So you might say, well, is that going to motivate Jackson State because they want revenge from a few years ago? I don't think so, because how many of those players are even still there now? Probably not many. So I don't think these teams really care about that. I think it's just South Carolina State has been the better team when it matters more in the later parts of the season. And the public, I think, is liking Jackson State too much here. So I think the value is on South Carolina State. Maybe not anymore, laying 3.5. It's a key number. So that number is kind of gone now, but I do like South Carolina State in that game. Ceiling birds are chirping, yeah. The moon crickets, I don't know. Can we still call them that? Maybe because it's old school, we can get away with it. I don't know. And then let's go to the actual FBS bowl game that's today. With these bowl games starting earlier than ever, this is the game that used to be the Camellia Bowl in Montgomery, Alabama at the Crampton Bowl, which is actually a baseball stadium. South Alabama is playing Western Michigan. This is now the IS4S Salute to Veterans Bowl. So, I mean, I'm fine with saluting veterans as far as I think they're constantly mistreated. I think they're being sent off to war for no good reason, but these games get sponsored by like military contractors, so that I don't like. IS4S is a military contractor. I don't like that shit. But looking at this game, I like Western Michigan in this game, man. I mean, Western Michigan, both teams are sitting at 6-6. So a lot of times when you get 6-6 teams in bowls, you want to look to that 6-6 team if they're playing against a team that has a better record than that, because the 6-6 team has a little bit more motivation just because they don't want to have a losing season, because the bowl is the difference between being 6-7 and 6-6. So teams tend to show up for that reason. In this game, both teams have reason to show up for that reason. But South Alabama, they were in a bowl last year, and they absolutely smashed another MAC team. Western Michigan's a MAC team. They smashed Eastern Michigan last year, a MAC team who just kind of squeaked into the bowls last year, and South Alabama embarrassed them, winning 59-10, I think. But because South Alabama had such an easy bowl win last year, does this game mean as much to them this year when some of these guys are back? Like, all right, we get to do it again against another MAC team. I don't know, man. I think it could be a matter of maybe they don't care as much about this game this time because just kind of repeating what they already did last year. Was Western Michigan, I think they want this game more because they lost 3 games in a row, and then they had to win their last game of the season against that Eastern Michigan team to even get to 6-6. So when a team shows up like that in their final game to get bowl eligibility, that kind of tells me they actually want to be in this bowl. So I think that is the case with Western Michigan here. Problem is Western Michigan has a terrible defense. Their offense is actually pretty good with Hayden, what's his name there? Hayden Wolf. He's a decent quarterback there. They have a decent attack. I mean, he can throw the ball a little bit. They can run the ball as well. So they got a balanced attack, whereas I think South Alabama actually is more of a passing attack, I think, with Lopez. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Actually, South Alabama's got a decent offense too, but South Alabama, until their last game, was in the mix to get into their conference championship game in the Sun Belt. If they had beaten Texas State, I think they might have been potentially going to be in the Sun Belt championship game, and they lost to Texas State, and now, because of that, they wind up in a bowl that's basically, at best, as good as their bowl was last year. So I think it matters more for Western Michigan, man, because Western Michigan, they haven't been in a bowl since 3 years ago, I think, which was a weird bowl game where they crushed Nevada in some game that I think they played out west somewhere. I forget. Nevada. I don't think it was the Potato Bowl in Boise. I don't remember, but the famous Idaho Potato Bowl. Maybe it was. I don't remember, but that was a game where the line moved 14 points from Nevada being like a 7-point favorite to a 7-point dog because they basically, all their team left basically, and Western Michigan actually wanted to show up and play in that game, and they won easy. So that was Western Michigan's last bowl game, but I think a lot of these guys were not there then. So I think Western Michigan is actually excited to be here, and we see some late movement coming in, taking the points with Western Michigan here, man. I mean, this line was 10, it was down to 8, then it was up to 9, never going to hit the 10 again, but now you're having to take the 7.5 with Western Michigan here. I agree with it. 79% of the cash on them, 66% of the tickets on South Alabama. South Alabama is getting all the public action. I think I maybe kind of the quarterback that has the bigger name there, and Gio Lopez, I think is his name. I don't really know. Big name, I don't even know his name. But the cash is coming in on the Western Michigan side, man, and that is how I would play this game if I was going to play it. I was thinking about playing it. I'll pass, but close to being a play. And it looks like a lot of money coming in on the under, too, down from 59.5 to 56.5 juice to the over. 68% of the tickets on the over. It's 72% of cash on the under. I don't really agree with the under as much here because when you got Western Michigan, they could score, and their defense is not very good, and South Alabama can also put up points, so I don't like the under in this game, but I do agree with the Western Michigan side in this one, and that is the way the money is going. If you like Western Michigan, I think you got to take the plus 7.5 or better, at least get that key 7.5 there, take them plus the points, get the touchdown, get over the touchdown there. That's the way that I look in that game, and that's going to do it for me, man. So I'm Tower Gang Toad once again. Thanks for hanging out, everybody. My plays one more time. College basketball, Arizona minus 3.5. Missouri State plus 11.5. Illinois plus 1.5. Dayton minus 1. NHL, Pittsburgh Penguins plus 118. Anaheim Columbus BJs over 6 minus 118. Boston Bruins plus 120. Utah San Jose over 6 minus 112. That's going to do it for me. Go follow me. I'm Tower Gang Toad. Of course, follow the Tower Gang Podcast. Patreon.com/TowerGain. Sign up for the Patreon, and you get live pre-show, post-show, bonus content. Hang out with us in the Telegram and submit to the mailbag, etc. Thanks again, guys, for hanging out. It's been a long one. Sorry for the audio issues. Yeah, obviously I'm going to go 8-0 today, Charles. Not going to happen, but let's get a winning day. Let's finish the year at least with a winning year. Come on, man. Let's have a good one. Let's have a good Saturday. Peace out, guys.